Hello, today I'd like to talk to you about the techniques of slide cutting or slither cutting. These are techniques that stylists use to put a feathery look in the hair, especially around the face, and to provide movement or action in the haircut, which means that the hair almost looks like it's in movement even though the head is standing still. And it means that usually there's not a lot of styling that has to be done to the hair in order for the cut to look beautiful. In order to do this, a stylist who uses the technique infrequently can use any good quality shear that she has, either from Japan or Korea, that's made of a nice steel, good sharp edge, and it should be able to accomplish this technique for her. But if a stylist is using this technique on most of her cuts, then she might want to invest in a tool, a shear, that was specifically designed to do slide cutting. The typical cutting shear has a straight blade, and the entire blade is designed to be used in the cut. For a slide cutting shear, the blade looks quite different. It's usually a wider blade, which means that the edge on the blade is thinner and therefore much sharper. Also, the blade has an arc in it, which allows the hair to be cut in the pivot area as opposed to the tip of the blade. They actually let physics do their work for them because the hair will not slide against the length of the blade as it will in a straight blade, but actually is stopped by forward movement by the top of that arc on the blade. And therefore, as she's cutting, she doesn't have to worry about the hair pushing out the end, and she doesn't have to make an adjustment in her curving movement in order to do that. When she's using a slide cut, what she usually wants to do is section the hair. Instead of being pulled up away from the head, she's going to section it and comb it so that it is going in the direction that she wants the hair to lay when it's cut. And what she's going to do, instead of just forcing the hair through the blade, she's going to open the blade fully, and then she's going to use very small, quick, smooth thumb motion to actually scissor through that section of hair. What that gives her at the end is a very feathery look with a curve to it, and it's a very controlled curve. This allows that hair to, here again, have that feeling of movement. And a lot of stylists think that they just are supposed to force the hair through the blade by just opening the blade and then pushing down on the blade through the hair. That's really not correct. The scissoring motion of the thumb is very, very important. For one thing, it gives a more controlled curve and edge to the hair. The other thing it does is it eliminates split ends, which she's likely to get if she just tries to force the hair. And also, just forcing that hair through the blade can often cause discomfort to her clients. And sometimes they'll let the stylist know, hey, that hurts, or sometimes they just won't come back. So if a stylist is going to use slide cutting technique for many of her cuts, then she really should have a tool that is designed to do that, similar to our Mirage D or our Shiseido Karma. One other thing I'd like to talk about is the difference between dry cutting and slide cutting. Although slide cutting is traditionally done on dry hair, dry cutting is a different thing altogether. On slide cutting, you're trying to achieve a certain curved, feathery look. On dry cutting, you're usually cutting the whole head of hair that has not been moistened or dampened, but is indeed dry. And a lot of times stylists are going to use this technique with people who either have very fine hair or very coarse hair that's all one color, that's going to show cut marks or layering lines when they're done with the cut. And if they've cut the hair wet, then they're going to have to go back and dry the hair and then recut to soften these cut lines. It's more time consuming, it can lead to a shorter haircut than the client originally wanted, and it's just more work for the stylist. So a lot of times she wants to do cuts using a dry head of hair instead of a wet head of hair. Good quality shears will do a lot of dry cutting and still maintain their edge. Poor quality shears will do dry cutting, but as As time goes on, they are likely to lose their edge more quickly because dry cutting is harder on the edge than wet cutting is. It's easier to wet cut with a shear than it is to dry cut with a shear. So if you have a client who's doing a lot of dry cutting, it's a good idea to steer her to a shear that's a little higher quality. She may have to pay a little more for it in the beginning, but she's going to save cost in the long run because it's not going to be needed to service as often, and her cuts are going to be more consistent. Thank you.